Okay, so we are right at 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. There might be some more people that are jumping on the phone as we go through, but welcome everyone for attending the training today and for wanting to learn more about how to use the mobile app with iMapInvasives, which this is sort of a part of the program. I'd say it's about a year or two old at this point. So if you're familiar with it, that's why, because it hasn't been around for that long. If you have any questions as we go through the training, this won't be a super long training. It'll just be about an hour today. But I try to incorporate some breaks so that you guys can ask any questions that you have. But we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so for any of the folks on today's training that were on a recent training I just did last Tuesday, kind of gave an overview of what iMapInvasives is. Some of these slides will look familiar to you, but for those of you who haven't attended any trainings before, they'll all be good information for you to know about. So I do like to start out by just kind of explaining what is iMapInvasives and what is it all about. So it's a program online, and it's free to use, that's used to document where invasive species are being found all across Pennsylvania. You can use it to learn about not only Pennsylvania and where invasive species are being found, also in surrounding states, because we do have a few states that are also participating with invasives. So in the US, we have New York, and also West Virginia, and up in New England, we have Vermont and also Maine. So those are some of the states that are close to us that also are utilizing the program. And so for purposes of understanding where species are coming from, so for example, if you are in the northern part of Pennsylvania, maybe it's really important to see data from New York as well. And so that's a nice thing to get advantage of. It's also used to document your control and eradication efforts. So if you're going out and doing treatments, that's information that can be documented in iMap as well. It's not something that you can document using the mobile app. We'll talk more about that as we go through today's training. But the mobile app is going to be used just for observation data, so where you're finding invasives and just marking a point on the map. But just continuing to talk about what iMap is overall, information that's collected in iMap can be used to better prioritize invasive species survey and management efforts. So if there's something that's being found in the area that you're working in, and maybe you weren't aware of that, that will help to influence the work that you're doing, and maybe something that you'd want to add to a list of species treating that perhaps someone else is helping you make you aware of that presence of that species. Also sharing that information. So this is a platform we like to refer to as a clearinghouse of information because the information goes in, but it also it goes out. So people are using that information and understanding the management efforts that are happening all over Pennsylvania if they are being documented. And that's information that we want people to know about. We want people to know where these species are, and we want people to use that information to prioritize their efforts as far as management goes, and so just maybe doing research or studies of some sort that help give a better handle on what's going on with invasives in Pennsylvania. So that's kind of an overview of what iMapInvasives is all about. Who is it for? So this is not something that's always intuitive. I think a lot of people think that the program is mainly for professionals, and so we're doing work with invasive species for a living. But that's not really the case. So one of the groups of people I have on my list here are citizen scientists. And these people, that it can encompass school students, it can be people who are retired, folks who are master watershed stewards, master naturalists, or master gardeners, and also just volunteers of a lot of environmental organizations. And these people are a really important group of people because they're out there finding stuff too all the time. And there's been a handful of encounters that I can remember where it was a really important species that was found by citizen scientists. And so that data, that information would not have been known about if it hadn't been for that citizen scientist. So I always like to make sure that to highlight that group of people and say iMapInvasives is certainly used, and we hope to have used by them as well. But if we're natural resource professionals, of course, we certainly cater to as well. And that can include folks in state agencies, environmental nonprofit organizations, consultants, and of course, folks in academia. And so there is really a broad range of people that the iMapInvasives program caters to. And so just a handful of some of the people to kind of give you a better idea of who the program is serving and who is using it. Their understanding of the people behind the program, I have listed here the 3 people mainly who are working with it, and we're all part of the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program, which is a branch under the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. And self, I'm the coordinator of Pennsylvania iMapInvasives, and I'm basically the face of the program, so I'm the person you're going to see if I happen to be at an outreach event that I'm at. I'll be hosting a booth or doing a presentation. I also send out a quarterly newsletter, and so you'll see my name attached to that. And if you have any questions, I'm usually the one that will be reaching out to you with an answer. But Kirsten Carlson and Mary Walsh are also very much a big part of the program as well. They're more on the back end, so you won't necessarily see them as much, but they are very important. She is our Conservation Information Manager for the Heritage Program, but as far as iMapInvasives goes, she does a lot of the technical side of things. So if there's any updates or refresh to reference layers that needs to happen, Kirsten would be the one that's doing that. We also have some other kind of tech services that we offer to some of our state agencies. And so Kirsten, again, is the one that kind of takes charge with that. And Mary, she is an aquatic ecologist for the Heritage Program, but with that, she does a lot of the work that involves our grants because we are grant funded, and so that's really, really important. She goes and makes sure that we continue to get funding. She does the grant reporting, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. So the 3 of us are administering the program here in Pennsylvania, and we make a pretty good team. So here's the 3 of us for you all to see. Okay, so let's get down to the topic for today's training, the mobile app. I'm going to give a basic introduction first, and then I'm going to give you kind of a getting started perspective, and then I'm going to show you how to actually use the mobile app to capture observation data for invasive species. Okay, so a general quick overview. The mobile app is a way for you to report invasive species when you're outdoors. It's quick and it's easy, and you don't need an internet connection to use the app. Keep in mind, though, you'll need to have access to the internet when you want to upload your data. So to actually collect the data, you won't need an internet connection. But to upload it is when you will need that Wi-Fi connectivity. And we'll go through that a little bit more as we go through the training. But just keep that in mind. It's not required to have internet to collect the data. So the mobile app was designed to be used on both Android and Apple devices. So if one or the other, then this is an app that you will be able to utilize. You can do it on either a smartphone or a tablet. So you have your choices there. One or the other will be fine. So actually use the mobile app. So if you have a registered user account with iMapInvasives, you can use the app. If you don't have an account already, you can get one for free, and it's not hard to do at all. You can do one of 2 things. You can send me an email, and there's an email address here on the screen, iMapInvasives@paconserve.org. So send me an email and say, I want a login account, and I'll set you up with one. You can go to our website, which is iMapInvasives.org, and there's a register button up at the top. And if you click that register button, it'll give you information to fill out, which will then get sent to me, and I will send you your login credentials. Okay, as long as you have an IMAP registered account, you will be able to use the app. So we've talked about, you don't necessarily need to be in a place that has an internet connection to use the app. All you really need is your mobile device's camera and your GPS, and be good to go. So you could be here in a forest in the middle of nowhere. You could be up on top of a mountain, or you'd be in the middle of a big water body, and you can still use the mobile app. There are no restrictions as far as your location goes, because you don't need that internet, at least not to collect the data. So getting started, I'm going to show you some screenshots and just kind of give you some basic instructions on how to get going. So to get started, you want to download the app. And all of the screenshots that you're going to see here on the screen are an Android smartphone. So that's going to give you kind of a basic idea of what it looks like on Android, and hopefully similar to an Apple device. For Android, you'd want to go to the Play Store, and there you would search under the keyword iMapInvasives, and from there you'll see it come up there on the screen. It has iMapInvasives Mobile and the name Tom Citronini with it. I believe that was the developer's name who put it together. So that's what we're looking for. Once that shows up, you want to install that. Follow the prompts to install the app. So when installed, the first thing to do before you actually start using it to add observation data is to set up your preferences. And the way to do that is you go and in the top left-hand corner, you're going to tap on the menu, which is the three horizontal lines, and you want to select a few things. So you want to select your default state. Most of us, we're going to be selecting Pennsylvania. And if you want to, if you're in New York or in West Virginia or those other nearby states, and that's where you live, you would select one of those states instead. But for most of us, we'll choose Pennsylvania as our default. You also put in your first and your last name, and then also your username. So this is the username is assigned to you when you receive your login credentials from me, where you get that email. And so again, if you have a login account already, you don't have a username. So you have to wait to actually get that information from me to fill that out. But just for reference, your username is typically going to be the first three letters of your first name and all of your last name. And it's going to be all lowercase and no spaces. So for example, for a name like Brianna McCormick, her username would be BRI, which is the first three letters of her first name, and McCormick, all of her last name, and all lowercase and no spaces. Okay, so keep that in mind. So still in the preferences section, you're going to choose how you want to see the species list. And this is all, again, your personal preference, how you'd like to view that. So you can use to view only the common names, you can use to view scientific names only, or you can choose to view both common and scientific at the same time. Just from, I guess a bit of advice is I would choose to view both at this time. And the being is if you're not, a scientist and you're not working with scientific names all the time, that might be a little confusing. And if you only view the common names, you might select a species that might be the one that you're interested in, because sometimes species are known by several common names, or it can maybe be known by a name that you're not familiar with. So if you're doing both at the same time, that kind of alleviates that problem. You can double check the common and the scientific name at the same time to make sure that you're entering data for the species that you want to. Okay, so continuing on with preferences, it gives you the option to, if you'd like, create a custom species list. This is not required, but it is an option. If you are someone that you're going out and you're generally finding, the same species, or if you're in an area and you know that just a handful that are there, you want to customize your list to only show a handful of species rather than showing all of them. And right now we track over 350 species in our track list. So that cuts down the amount species that you're looking at, kind of makes it a little bit easier to scroll through. So, for example, here in the screenshots, I put together a custom list of just 5 species: Hemlock woolly adelgid, Japanese weed, Norway maple, Oriental bittersweet, and privet. And so I'm really only working with those species. It'd be helpful just to put together a custom list that I don't have to scroll through 350 species to find one that I'm looking for. I can just look through the 5. Again, this is an option. You don't have to do it that way. Right in the phone, I have it set up that I have all of them. So you can do it whatever way makes more sense for you. You can also choose to see what kind of map is going to show up on your phone. So you have the choice of either a road view or a satellite view. And again, this is your personal preference, whichever one you prefer. You can choose that here. So in case this message shows up on your phone, it says, your version of the state data is most likely out of date. Please go to Preferences and select Update. So if that happens to show up on your phone, you're just going to go in, like it says, to the Preferences, and at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a button that says Update State Data. And that's just making sure that all the information is up to date and accurate. So if you see that message, just follow the prompts, go into Preferences, and you can update it very easily. Okay, is there any questions so far about anything we've gone over?
One question. You mentioned that you don't need internet access, but what about if you're in an area where there's no cell service? Does it like your internal phone GPS?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So it is using your internal phone. So literally, as long as your phone is on and has battery power, you can use the app.
Okay.
Good question. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So you're out in the field and you just found an invasive species. Okay, so let's go through and actually create an observation using the mobile app. So these screenshots that you'll see when you want to go ahead and get started. So I'm on my phone. I have the app, my home page, and the first screen that you'll see is the one here on the right-hand side, and it's basically giving you just a quick overview of what everything is. If you would tap the screen after seeing that, all of that will disappear, and it's just kind of give you that quick overview to show you where everything is. So again, up in the top left, you'll see that's the menu where you can select your preferences and you can choose to then upload your species once you've cataloged them. The bell on the top right is where you're going to select to enter a new observation record. Scrolling on that screen is going to allow you to view the various observations that you are uploading. Also, you can see at the very bottom the number of records that you have ready to upload. Just giving you a basic overview of what's available on the app. And all these screenshots that you're going to be seeing are examples that's provided on an Android smartphone. So you want to go ahead and click on that green button at the top. It's to add observation to go ahead and get started. And the example scenario that I'm going to run through this morning, if you were out and you found Japanese knotweed and you want to find, or if you want, you want to record your finding of Japanese knotweed. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take a picture of what you found. And to do that, there's going to be a little icon at the top of the screen. It looks like a little camera, and you want to click on that. Keep in mind that the app is set up to only allow you to take one photo, which is fine. So go ahead and take your one photo. If you want to take additional, use your camera that's available in your phone, and you can take additional photos. And afterwards, once you've done all of this and you have access to a desktop computer again, you can add those additional photos that way. The app is only set up to save one picture with your observations. You can't take multiple photos and save them to the app, but you take multiple photos and save them just on your phone, and you can upload those later. Okay? So just keep in mind when you are taking photographs of what you're finding to take distinguishing photographs. So avoid taking pictures from far away, except for infestation photos. This is really important because when you are out in the field and you're finding something, you're really going to rely on those good photographs that you're taking in order to confirm the species ID. So if you take a photo from really far away, we'll be able to see the distinguishing characteristics of that species, and we won't be able to confirm it. That data may essentially end up getting deleted because we aren't able to confirm it. So make sure you're taking good quality photos. Keep in mind, think about taking photos from different angles, taking from an aerial view, from a side view, from the underside. And again, those distinguishing characteristics are really important. So if you have something, a species that has thorns, make sure to take some pictures of that. And also, it's really important too, photos where you're basically describing how big or small something is, and just by putting your hand in the picture, or a ruler, or a coin, any of those things will help to distinguish the size, and that can be really important. For example, knotweed and giant knotweed can look very similar, but if you have something in the photos that's distinguishing the size of the leaves, you'll be able to better distinguish if something is just the Japanese or the giant, because the giant is going to have larger leaves. So keep those things in mind. So we're continuing in with making your observations. So next on the list is filling in your observation details. So you can select to add your information to a project if you wish, but this is optional. You don't have to. In preference, a project in iMapInvasives is a way to group similar data together so that you can better query for it later on. So if you were part of a BioBlitz and all that data is similar because it's part of that event, then you might want to create or add your data to an already created project. So for example, there was just a BioBlitz that happened here in Allegheny County earlier this year, and so that would be something that you could add your data to. We also have other projects for different purposes. We have Pennsylvania Sea Grants, they have zebra and quagga mussel database, so we have a project just for that information, so again, you can keep it all together. So if that makes sense for you, go ahead and add your data to that project. And again, if it doesn't, then don't worry about it. Just add your data without the project information. The second thing here on this page is just selecting the species that you found. And again, it's going to that drop-down is going to be configured based on how you set up your preferences before. So if you chose to view just common names, if you chose to view just scientific names, or you chose to view both, the common and the scientific, at the same time. This is where that's going to come into play, is that species list. And then the date field, this is going to automatically default to the current day that you are making your observation on. But if for whatever reason, if you needed to change the date to an earlier date, maybe the day before, you can update that if you need to. So your observation location. This is going to automatically happen based on the GPS in your phone. Okay. So when this is an example of showing you what it looks like with the map on. So I took that picture when I was here at our office, and you can see we're here in the Pittsburgh area, and so the phone automatically knew where I was. But if you are in an area that does not have the internet, you will notice that your base map is not going to be there. And that's because even though you can't see the map, your GPS is still working. So trust in your GPS. It will be okay. It will find where you are, and it will mark it. But if you have internet, of course, just double check to make sure that the location is accurate. But just keep in mind, if your base map isn't there, it's okay. It's working just fine. Okay, so one of the last things you want to add in is comments. So this will help to make your observation more informative, and that's going to be helpful for other people who are looking at your observation that might want to know a little bit more about it or what was happening at that time. So you can include things like the population density. So something had, a really big patch of Japanese knotweed, and you kind of want to spread that a little bit more. You can do so. You can also talk more about your specific location and say, I was really close to this particular landmark, and that's helpful to add. You can put in if there is other people who were with you when you made that observation, and that can be helpful just depending on who might be looking at that, and they want to say, oh, there was so-and-so and so-and-so, this is good information to know. So here's my example. I put in the following comment. I said, dense infestation of Japanese knotweed found along the bank of the river near Western Pennsylvania Conservancy's office building. So there's no requirement to put in comments, but again, more information that you're going to put in, it can only serve to help make that information more useful to the people that are looking at it. Okay, so once you've done all of that, you want to save your observation. And once you do that, it's going to show up in a list on the home page of your app. And you see here, I have the one observation for Japanese knotweed on a particular day. So once you're back in an area that you have an internet connection, that's when you can actually upload observations that you have in that list. So right now I've only got one, but you have, I don't even know how many, but you probably can have as many as you want. So you would just, to see all of your observations, if there was multiple, you would just scroll on that home page and you could see all of them. So what you do then to actually upload when you have access to the internet again is to check the box next to each one. So see a little checkbox area. So I've gone ahead and I've checked that. And then in menu is where you'll see the option to upload. So you'll check each of the boxes that you want to upload the observations for, and you'll say upload the selected. And then there'll be a window that shows up, and it says, are you sure you want to upload this one record? And you say yes. You're confirming that, yes, I do want to upload this information. And that will essentially then go directly into the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives database if it's the Pennsylvania version that you have selected as your default. Selected a different state like New York or West Virginia, that information will be uploaded into their state's database. Okay, so it's very important to make sure that you're selecting the appropriate state. Just mind, if you go through that process, you select the observations that you want to upload, you say, go ahead, upload these, and they stay on your screen for whatever reason, that means that they haven't been uploaded. So essentially, you want them to disappear from your app. You want them to go away. That's a good thing. If main, go through the process again. Select the checkboxes, say upload selected, and hopefully they will disappear. If there's any issues that you have with that, it's probably because you don't have an internet connection. Okay, so just sure you're in an area that you have Wi-Fi. Okay, so once you've done that, you're basically finished with the part where you're going to be utilizing the mobile app. I do recommend that when you're ready to or have the ability to go back to either your office or your home office, get access to a desktop computer, open up your records again, and add any additional details that you might want, because there is more information you can select in the desktop version that you can't select on the mobile app. And that's just because they wanted to keep the mobile app more simple and more clean. They didn't want to clog it down with too much stuff. So here you can go in and add additional comments. You can talk about the site access. Maybe there was, rough terrain or a homeowner that you had to talk to before you could get access to that particular area. Directions to how you got there. There's things that you can put in. So keep in mind, make sure to go back into your records via the desktop version and add any additional comments that might be appropriate. Keep in mind, you can access the database by going to iMapInvasives.org. And just again, mentioning some of those other details that you can add. You talk about additional observers, the number of species that you might have found if there is the ability to count them, site conditions, and the site directions and the access information. And maybe you collected a specimen, and that's really important if you are able to do that. So you would want to catalog where that specimen is being housed at, the specific museum name, aquarium, botanical garden, etc. Okay, now what? What happens now that you've just gone through this process and you've submitted a report? So administrator, probably myself, will take a look at your record information and your photos. And I will have, if it's one that needs an expert to review, I will get in touch with that expert. I will have them take a look at your photos in your record. And if they say everything looks good, then we go ahead and we confirm that record. And that is then data that can be utilized by other registered users. If there's any questions regarding the species identification based on the photos that you provided, or if the location doesn't seem quite right, like maybe it's an aquatic species and it's on land, so that would be a red flag that we would look at and make sure, we would want to make sure it was mapped correctly. I would follow up with you and I would say, hey, you know, maybe we need to work out what's going on here. Okay, so all of our information is QC'd. I think I have another slide on here that talks about that. But essentially, once you go through that process and it's confirmed, that data is now ready to be used by anyone who has an IMAP user account. Part of our database is very important because we are ensuring that the information that we are saying is confirmed is actually accurate. That's something that we take a lot of pride in. We have our roots in the Natural Heritage Program, and so, of course, the Natural Heritage Programs are very careful about what data they are calling accurate, and so we are the same in that regard. Data is coming from a trusted source, from someone that we know is an expert in a certain species or is with a certain organization that we partner with. Data is generally automatically confirmed. We don't necessarily need to have an expert in-house or an external expert take a look at that. Here's some examples just to kind of give you an understanding of what I'm talking about. So recently we've had some reports for New Zealand mud snail, which found in Center County. And all of those were reviewed, all the photos for those observations were reviewed by Dr. Robert Billen. He's a gastropod expert down in South Carolina. We have many, many reports for plant species that we get, and so those are generally reviewed by our botanists here with the Natural Heritage Program in Pennsylvania. And then any reports that we get from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, all of their stuff generally goes through the Morris Arboretum, which is located in Philadelphia, and so that we would consider trusted data, so it would be automatically confirmed. Okay, so again, just clarifying and understanding that your data is important. Even one more record for Japanese knotweed. This is important to know about because you are helping to aid in the understanding of where these species are at. And one of the reasons why I like to point out that a record for Japanese knotweed is important because, as many of us know, Japanese knotweed is literally everywhere in Pennsylvania, unfortunately. But right now, because Pennsylvania IMAP is still somewhat in its infancy as far as databases go, we're about 4 years old right now, we don't have data for all of these species, even the really common ones. We're based on the data that we get from our users, and so the folks that we partner with and we get bulk loads from. We get information from museums, from BioBlitzes, from a variety of sources. But really, there's still a lot of places where you could look for Japanese knotweed in a map, and there's going to be a county that says it doesn't have it. And that's because we haven't gotten data for that county yet. So and it is so important to go out and record where you are finding these species, because that is information that will build our distribution maps so that they're having more accurate information that they are displaying. And so it's going to help these natural resource professionals and to prioritize their survey and their treatment efforts. So if they're out in the area and, you found, let's say, water chestnut, and that is a pretty somewhat uncommon species in our state. Maybe they weren't aware of that before, and you were the one to help to make them aware. So then they can act on that and hopefully go out and do some type of treatment. So again, any and all information that you can provide is going to be very, very helpful. So here a screenshot, I just wanted to mention that really quick. So this is current distribution information that we have for the New Zealand mud snail. You can see here in the photo is very, very, very tiny. But even though it's small, it's a really important species that we want to know about. One, because it's so rare in the state. It's only been found in Erie and Center counties to date. And so this has a really has big implications for water bodies that are being impacted by this species. It can affect water quality. It can affect the other species that are living in those areas. And so this is one that we definitely have a better handle on where it is and where it's spreading to, so that we can notify the state agencies, which in this case would be the Fish and Boat Commission, but anyone else who might be working with the species doing studies or any kind of research. This is data that is really important. This is just an example of why we really put a lot of effort into getting even just one more record for one species, because it may tip the scale as far as making a difference for letting people know about it. For more information on how to use the mobile app, I am recording today's webinar, so you can always reference the recording from today. It will be on our website. But you can also go to the iMapInvasives.org website, and through the Resources tab, there is a mobile tools page. And on there is a complete user guide and more information on how to use that. So you have a few choices on how to go ahead and reference how to use the mobile app if you have any questions, or if anyone else you know has questions about it. Any questions that anyone has so far about what we've gone over? So there's a few more things that I just wanted to mention. Again, for those of you who were on the training last Tuesday, some of these slides will look a little familiar, but I had to put them in here as well because I think they're really important to mention. So cultivated species. This is an interesting topic, but again, one that's really important. So when you're submitting data to iMap, observation data, I don't want you to report cultivated species. And these are going to be ones that you'll find in people's yards, in their gardens, other landscaped areas, and maybe public places. So these are going to be species that, even though they are invasive, they were planted on purpose, they're not going to be treated. They're not going to be cut. They're not going to be removed. So essentially, the purpose of iMap is to go in and document where we're finding invasives in natural areas, because these are going to be places that we will go in and we will treat. Someone in Pennsylvania will want to do that, I'm hoping, has the capacity to do that. Ones that are in these landscape settings, that's not the case. You would probably get in really big trouble if you went and cut down someone's calorie pear, even though you might want to. So, but just keep in mind that, of course, as many of us know, whenever these species are being planted in these cultivated settings, they certainly have the opportunity to escape into natural areas. And so maybe, you just want to look around and see if there's, a forest nearby, and if something maybe escaped into there. And so, again, I'd just like to point out, unfortunately, a lot of these species that are invasive and are being, planted, they are still widely available in places that a lot of us probably shop at, Lowe's, Home Depot, your local tree. So just, do your homework ahead of time and make sure you know what you're buying. Don't buy an invasive species, because you will find them for sale everywhere, which is unfortunate. So for purposes of iMap, make sure that you're not reporting species like these calorie pears in a parking lot, but I found them nearby in a natural setting. That's what we want you to report on. Here are examples of that to make sure that I'm making my point on this. So Spirea, this is another invasive species. Here we can see it being planted in a home garden. Don't report that. It's not going to be treated. It's not going to be removed by a natural resource professional. But here is natural setting in this forest. We want about this. This is one that you would want to report on. Barberry, this is one you're going to find being sold all over the place in Lowe's and Home Depot. Don't buy it. And if you would happen to see it already planted, like in these examples here, don't report that. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be planted, but we are not going to be cataloging that in iMap. You would report it if you found it here in a natural setting like this. Is another one. Here in this photo, you can see it's been, maintained here in this parking lot type of area. But in a natural setting, tree of heaven, or Lanthus, as it's referred to by its scientific name, is all too common, and here we would want to know about it in that type of setting. Also, hardy kiwi vine. This one actually just, I think, a few weekends ago, I found that for sale at Lowe's, and I was completely devastated. It's one that people like to have in their home gardens, but not one that we want to report to iMap. Here in setting, which is completely horrendous to see what it has done, it basically acts like kudzu in that it climbs the trees and just completely states the natural ecosystem here. This is one we would want to know about. So don't report it from a home garden. Report it if you find it in a natural setting like that. Okay. So before we wrap up for today, I did want to go over a handful of species, both early detection species and high priority species for you on the lookout for. So these are ones that, we are, of course, interested in any invasive species that you might want to report, but these are ones out of a lot that you should definitely keep on your radar. So early detection species, we're going to define that as being a species that's newly established in Pennsylvania, a species that's thought to be in Pennsylvania but is not well documented, a species that's not found in Pennsylvania but expected to arrive, and all these, be under the heading that it would be at least moderately invasive. One is giant Slovenia, the aquatic species that can form dense mats of vegetation that essentially reduces water flow and lowers the light and oxygen conditions in water where it's at. Shades native plants and creates bare spots in the habitat below the water surface, alters diversity and quality of a natural ecosystem. So right now, it was first found in the United States in South Carolina in 1995, and where it is now, it's scattered throughout the southern U.S., from California to Virginia. So this is one that we don't have in Pennsylvania right now, but we did have it, which we may, and maybe it just hasn't been found yet. This is what we definitely want to report on, because the first record would hopefully be, it would lead to early detection and rapid response efforts. More information on this species can be found in a new guide that just came out last year called the Mid-Atlantic Field Guide to Aquatic Invasive Species. It's available online, so if you don't have a hard copy, you can still access it on the internet. Species is called wavy leaf basket grass. It is a new species that was found recently in Pennsylvania, and we'll talk about that in a second. But for what it does, it can completely cover a forest floor, which basically outcompetes the native species that are there. Kind of looks a little bit similar to Japanese silkgrass. You can see one of the photos here, the differences. The wavy leaf basket grass definitely has like a wave to it that you can see in the leaves. The silkgrass does not have that. There's better photos online, so you can certainly see better comparisons than what I have here, but that just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what it looks like. Provides very little value to wildlife, so it's not helping out the native species. And this species is still kind of relatively new for the U.S., so its ecological impacts are mostly unknown, but there is some research and studies that are going on, and this is one that we are worried about. So again, if you happen to find it, we really, really want to know about where you're finding it at. Pennsylvania it was just found last year for the very first time in 2 state parks in York County. And it was known to be in Maryland since 1996. So Maryland has been dealing with this one for a little while. Pennsylvania has had it on its radar, and we knew we would get it at some point, and now we have. And so, again, just a county that we know of right now, but if you find it in any other place, and even if you find it in other places in York County, please, please, please report this species because it's what we want to know about. Information on this species is also in the Atlantic Field Guide to Aquatic Invasive Species. There is terrestrial ones that they talk about in there. Sitting crab. This one is a problem because its burrowing behavior causes erosion of stream banks, damage to embankments, and clogged drainage systems. It is considered a nuisance for recreational anglers because it can get tangled in fishing nets. So right now it's known to be found along the Gulf Coast, San Francisco Bay, Chesapeake Bay, Hudson River, and other East Coast areas. Again, information on this species can also be found in the Mid-Atlantic Field Guide to Aquatic Invasive Species. The early detection species I want to talk about is the Asian longhorn beetle. This species is a major threat to all of America's hardwood forests. It's known to invade urban spaces, forest edges, and forest interiors. So wherever it finds its host trees, it will go there. It's known to attack 12 genera of trees, and maple, for whatever reason, seems to be the one that it likes the most. It doesn't move far on its own, even though it does have the ability to fly. So basically, if it has a host tree, it's not going to stray from that host tree until that tree dies, and then it would move on probably to the one right next to it. The main way that this species gets around is us, humans. So it will get around on cars. If you have a pickup truck and you're moving firewood, it can hitch a ride in the firewood. Also, the reason that it came to the United States in the first place from Asia is because it found a home in wooden pallets. And so those pallets were used to ship goods. They came over on the big ships. And next thing you know, we have Asian longhorn beetle because it came over on the pallet wood. So, Asian longhorn beetle, or ALB as it's commonly known by, is not in Pennsylvania. So we hope that it stays that way. Right now there are quarantine areas in parts of Massachusetts, New York, and Ohio. So because the quarantine states are very much near Pennsylvania, this is one that a lot of people have on their radar. And I encourage you guys, if you don't have it on your radar right now, keep it on your radar. You want to definitely, you're not necessarily going to see the beetle, but you will see signs of the beetle if you do see something like it. So you're looking for round holes in a tree. Those are the exit holes that the beetle comes out of. There's also little chew marks in a tree, and that's where the female beetle is laying her eggs. If you see anything like that, definitely want to perk up your ears and kind of take a closer look and make sure that it might not be the Asian longhorn beetle. There was a book that came out fairly recently called Beetle Busters, Rogue Insect and the People Who Track It. And this is a really great book for just learning more about what the beetle is, why it's such a big deal. There's a lot of really great color photographs in there as well. So I would encourage you to check out that book if you haven't already, and you learn more about the Asian longhorn beetle. So the early detection species, ones that either we don't have yet in Pennsylvania or ones that are not very well documented. But these high priority species, and these are ones that we do have in Pennsylvania, and they are just not very widespread at this point. So we're saying that they're found in less than a third of our counties, and they are considered to be at least moderately invasive. So it's a list of high priority species out of many. I just chose a handful to kind of keep on your radar. So Bradford pear. This is one that I think we feel like we have a lot more of than what we actually do, and that's because this is a cultivated species. So you'll see very frequently planted along roadways and public spaces. But as far as where it's invading natural areas, it's not all that common, and thankfully we want to keep it that way. So the issues with Callery pear. So when it's planted or cultivated, you know, in the landscape settings, its seeds can be dispersed, wildlife and wind, and it can potentially invade those natural spaces. So naturalized calorie pairs will compete with the native early successional trees. Okay, so this is definitely, you know, its biggest issue is competing with our native species. And even though it's known as an invasive, it's still widely available for sale. Again, all those places that we all like to shop at, Home Depot and your local nursery, it's found there. So don't purchase it. Tell your friends and your family, don't purchase it. It's not one that we want to disperse. And I mentioned about it's being found on roadways. This is a scene that you will probably see in many places. You will see in the springtime these beautiful blooms of white flowers, but generally coming from a calorie pair, and that's not very beautiful when you understand the consequences that it can bring. So where is it now? So we know that there are naturalized populations in the southeast part of our state, also Maryland and Virginia, and the southern U.S. and Midwest. So it is in many different places, certainly probably being helped along because it is still widely sold. If you want more information about calorie pear or Bradford pear, as it's known by both names, there's information from the DCNR, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Red-eared slider. This is a species that a lot of people have as pets, and that's not a problem when it's kept in an aquarium inside. It becomes a problem when it is released into the environment, which all too often can happen. So the issues with red-eared slider are that it competes with the native, both aquatic and terrestrial turtles for food, basking areas, and nesting sites. It also has the ability to spread diseases because it will survive and reproduce in areas that are polluted. So even though it's fine for the turtle, it's not very good for all the other species that could potentially be impacted by that. As I mentioned, it's frequently bought as a pet, but then released when it gets big. They're really cute when they're small, and then it's like, oh no, it just outgrew its aquarium. What do I do with it? And sometimes people will just go to a lake nearby and try to be nice and say, here, go ahead and live in the lake. But what you just did is you just released an invasive species that will probably have devastating impacts for the native turtles that were already living there. So never release your pet fish or turtles into the environment. It's not a good idea. Either return it to a pet store, or I'm sure there's some humane societies that would be able to provide assistance with that. More information on that topic about not releasing your pets into the wild at a website called habitatitude.net. Then as far as the locations of where the red-eared slider is right now, there are naturalized populations in the southeast part of Pennsylvania and also in Pittsburgh. So for information about this species, you can check that out in the Mid-Atlantic Field Guide to AIS. Japanese Angelica tree. This is a species that can threaten native species and natural habitats where it's being found at because it will shade out and prevent the growth of the native species. Ultimately, it's going to reduce biodiversity. The tree is basically able to form large competitive thickets, which is where that shade issue comes from. Its spread is aided by birds. They will come in and eat the berries from the tree and basically disperse them unintentionally, but it happens in areas where it's not already at. So you also see that the tree has these really nasty-looking thorns. So that's not something that I think many of us would really appreciate. So again, this is not very good to have around. So where is it now? It is in southern Pennsylvania. And just a note to mention is that it does have a striking similarity to a native species called Aurelia spinosa. So because it does look very similar to this other tree, it may be overlooked and it might be in more places than we are currently aware of. And for more information on this species, there is a fact sheet available from the DCNR. I want to mention Brazilian waterweed. This is an aquatic species that grows very rapidly and can form mats at the water's edge where it's found at, which can crowd out the native species. It can impede recreational activities such as boating and fishing because it can create these really thick mats so you can't really utilize the area for recreation. Negatively impact water quality and makes very poor habitat for the fish that might be living there. Also can clog water intake pipes because the pieces of the plant fragment in those pipes. It can also be confused because it looks very similar. It can be confused with hydrilla, which are aquatic invasives. So both of those are not good, but you want to be able to distinguish between the two. I do have a photo of the tier on my slide, but again, it's probably not the best photo. I know some better resources out there. So if you want to be able to see the difference, I would just do some Googling or talk to one watershed specialist in your region, and they will probably have more information about that with the county conservation district system. So where species right now? So as far as now, it's being found mainly near Philadelphia, but there's also been findings in Allegheny and Bedford counties. And get more information about this species, you can check out that Mid-Atlantic Field Guide to Aquatic Invasive Species. So there's a new brochure that was just created by staff here at the Natural Heritage Program. It's called Be an Early Detector, Protect Pennsylvania from These Emerging Invasive Species. This brochure highlights 12 emerging invaders to be on the lookout for. It has 3 species that are already found in Pennsylvania but are rare, and then the other 9 are all species that we don't yet have in Pennsylvania. So if you want access to this brochure, we do have it available on the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives website, and the link here will take you right to it. But if you want to navigate to the brochure, if you go onto the website and click on resources and then be on the lookout, you will be able to find the brochure that way. So again, keep these species on your radar. These are ones that if we do find them in natural settings, we definitely want to know about them. Okay, so that wraps up my training. I think I did pretty good on time. Is there any questions that anyone has about anything to talk about today?
I have just one question on projects. So if we wanted to set up a project, would we just contact you and then?
Yeah, so to set up the project, that's something that only the administrator can do. So just send me an email and say, hey, Amy, I want to set up a project, and I'm going to ask you for information on who wants access to the project, so who can actually contribute information and who can see that information, and just a few other details. But yes, just contact me and we'll get that set up for you.
Right.
Questions before we wrap up? Well, thanks everybody for joining, and if you do have any questions later on, you can always feel free to contact me via email or phone. I have my contact information here, and I always look forward to your feedback, and good luck with the mobile app now that you all know what to do. So thanks everybody.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.